I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director DeSalvo, would you please read our priorities?
I'd be happy to. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students: to provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff; direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community. Would you like me to do the mission and vision?
Well, okay, since you asked.
Our mission statement is to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And our vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you very much. We'll move on to board reports. Are there any? Director Snyder.
I've just got one. This past weekend, the girls from the dance teams at Central and North, there was 5 girls from each school. That's all you're allowed to take. Went to Iowa State to try out for the All-Iowa dance team. And so they'll find out probably in the end of September, beginning of October. Keep your fingers crossed.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right, we'll move on to communications. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We have 3 open forum requests this evening. And first is David Reek, next is Jack Ox, and last is Bob Babcock. When you come up to the microphone, please give us your name and address, and each of you will have 3 minutes. We'll start with David.
Hello, my name is David Reek. My address is 2212 East 12th Street, Davenport, Iowa. I want to talk to you all a little bit today about what you all can do as a school board to push for equal funding legislation in the next legislative session. And I want to tell you that I speak with some authority on the matter of political advocacy because even though it kind of will hurt me and I'll lose some votes by saying this, I am a recovering political operative myself. And I spent several years crisscrossing the country working in political campaigns until I came to Davenport and met my wife and decided that marrying my wife was more important to me than working in political campaigns for the rest of my life. So I want to talk to you guys about the challenge that you're going to have in getting equal funding legislation passed in the next legislative session. And that's because you're going to have enough votes. You're going to have some people support you in the state legislature because they're here from the Quad Cities. But across the state, you're going to have state legislators who are going to vote based off of whether or not they are above average or below average in the funding they get in their school districts. And on top of that, the state legislators that are below average are still going to have other legislative priorities that they're going to be thinking about that when it comes to what they want to spend our budget on, that they might still vote against us on this issue. And so what we need to do is convince the governor to really push equal funding legislation through the state legislature. Now, you might say that's going to be difficult. How would we convince the governor to do that? Well, let me tell you that when there's a political issue at stake and you have a great number of voters who will benefit a little bit, and then a few number of voters who will be punished by this issue a lot, it is politically easier to side with the fewer voters, because the fewer voters are actually going to change their mind on that issue, while the majority of voters, while they'll be impacted in the positive, they will say, this doesn't impact me enough for me to change my vote. For example, let's say we are living in a city where there's a mayoral race, and in that mayoral race, you have the issue of whether or not a university should build a football stadium. And let's say that everyone in that city benefits from that football stadium, except for a select few who live by the football stadium and don't want all those kids and those problems in their backyard. If you were a mayor in that political race, you would vote to stop the football stadium because those people are going to change their votes, while the people who are for the football stadium would not change their votes based on that issue. So I want to give you two things that you guys can act on in the next few weeks to support equal funding legislation before the next legislative session. First, you can do an online email campaign. You can use the Funding Equality Now Facebook page, and you can use your own Facebook pages to generate support for this, and you tell people to go to a certain website, and these are free and completely easy to do. I can help you guys set this up if you want. But send them to that page, and all they have to do is click a button after they type in their name and address, and you can send an email to the governor, to the lieutenant governor, to their public email addresses, and say, hey, this issue is important to me. And what we want to do is convince them that it's important enough to individual voters that they will change their vote on this issue. The second thing you all can do is show up to events for the candidates who are running for governor, both Republican and Democrat. And what you want to do is you want to get all the candidates talking about funding equality when they come to Davenport. And so what you want to do is you want to convince them that it's important enough to the voters in your party that they are willing to make the decision of who they're going to support based off of funding equality. And that's a really important thing to think about, because if you're a Democrat and you're competing against 6 or 7 other Democratic governor candidates, you're trying to separate yourself from someone who believes mostly the same things you do. They're all going to want to spend more money on education, and they're all going to want to roll back collective bargaining reforms. But they can differentiate themselves when they come to Davenport by supporting funding equality. And the goal is you want to get every candidate running for governor as vocal in their support for funding equality as they can, so that when Governor Reynolds sees what's going on in Davenport, she tells herself, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose votes in Davenport. I better get funding equality legislation passed in this session. Thanks so much for hearing me out, and I just hope you'll take those into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Bob, do you have enough time? I know you're kind of pressed for time. Okay, Mr. Ox.
Good evening. My name is Jack Ox. I live at 4018 229th Street, Circle North, Port Byron, Illinois. I'm a teacher at West High School. I teach economics and American government. I have 10 of my students here this evening. I'm a 20-year Army veteran. I've taught for 17 years, and I'm starting my 15th year at West. First, I want to thank you guys for serving our community and being on the school board. Your position is unpaid, and we appreciate your hard work, dedication, and time, so I really appreciate that. I'm here tonight to model for my students how to participate in the democratic process. It is our responsibility as citizens to tell our elected officials what we think. Moreover, the right to assemble and the right to free speech is rights guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution. I asked the school board tonight to enact a policy to mandate recycling in all buildings and sporting events. Right now, hundreds of bottles are thrown away in the trash. This plastic bottle came from my classroom and would have been in the trash dump later this week. Last spring, the Davenport Community School District Athletic Department was a partner with the Waste Commission of Scott County to begin recycling at Brady Stadium. The goal was to reduce the amount of plastic that is part of our waste stream. I asked the school board to make the next step in cycling at all buildings and all sports events, not just Brady Stadium. It is time to show our students that we're doing our part to save the environment and be active participants in the recycling efforts in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Bob?
Bob Babcock, 2421 North Gain Street in Davenport. I'm loving hearing these comments tonight. They're great. I was in the same room with you folks a couple of weeks ago about sustainable energy with the schools in Davenport, and I want to continue to urge you about the importance of setting up a sustainable system for your energy usage. My understanding, at least a couple of years ago, was that the Davenport schools used about $1.2 million a year in electrical costs. That's a lot of money. If you could get rid of that, that would be some more money for you to spend on other things that the students need in Davenport. It's entirely possible. There are all sorts of ways of financing. There are grants. You can have a power purchase agreement with investors and allow the investors to enjoy the 30% tax deduction, and then the and that is directly from taxes paid that the investors would have, and 85% is accelerated depreciation off the income that investors have. That is a huge break that would help Davenport be able to afford setting up a sustainable energy system with solar. And I would suggest wind, too. There are some new developments, new engineerings that are coming down the pike with wind. But it's entirely possible for the Davenport schools to get entirely off the grid between the battery technology and other storage technologies. Solar panels alone are expected to last about 50 years. They're guaranteed for 25 to 30. That's a long period of time, and the system can pay for itself in under a decade, which means that after that, you're saving $1.2 million a year plus whatever the inflated cost of energy would be. It simply makes sense. Now, that said, we've been hearing a lot lately about this humongous hurricane down in Texas, haven't we? And I was reading 8 people lost their lives over the weekend. And some parts of Texas are not going to be inhabitable for a long time because of the damage. I'm hearing a lot of people in the science world saying this is a direct result of global warming, which is a direct result of using fossil fuels. And there is a lot of energy that is produced by using fossil fuels. So it just makes sense. We care about our kids. I mean, that's what the school system is about. These kids are going to be inheriting this planet, and their kids will be inheriting this planet. What kind of planet are we going to be giving to them? So it makes sense on many different levels to go full speed ahead. There have been other school systems around the country. Information on them is readily available. If they can do it in the Waco school systems in Iowa, they can do it here. You can do it here in Davenport. And I want to really urge you to take a very strong look about becoming totally sustainable. It just makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you to Mr. Reek, Mr. Ox, Mr. Babcock. It really is important to the board to hear from our community. And for you students out there, you were able to see some of these examples of speaking your mind, telling the board what's going on, and all of you have that same authority. You have that same, I don't want to say responsibility, but if there's something that you think is important for the board to hear or for the district to think about, it's great. We've had some fantastic students over the years that have come and talked about what's important to them. And so really, we're really glad you're here for whatever reason you're here. But do think about taking an active role in participating in the district activities, just like you're doing tonight. So thank you very much. We'll move on to upcoming events. Director Gosa, would you please read those for us?
August 28th at 6 p.m., a regular board meeting at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. September 4th is a holiday. All buildings will be closed. Tuesday, September 5th, 5:30, Committee of the Whole, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. September 11th, 6 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. September 12th, school board election polls open between 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Visit the Scott County Auditor's website to find your polling location. September 18th, third Monday instead of the fourth Monday, 6 p.m., annual organizational regular meetings, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. And then September 19th, 5:30, Lizac, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Cluel?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of bill?
Mr. President,
Director Cluel?
I move that the board approve the resolution as follows on the adoption of bills. The resolution reads as follows. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the Secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the Treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of August 10th, 2017 through August 23rd, 2017.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Cluel?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, we have a collective responsibility statement in the district that says that every member of the Davenport Community School District team is responsible for the success of all students. And we have used that for the last year, and it certainly continues as something that we all feel is necessary for every one of us, beginning with the board down through everyone who works in our buildings and supports students. This year we're taking it one step forward, and we're using the word accountable. And I'm asking people voluntarily, if they'd like to actually, the collective responsibility statement's on the front, and on the back it says, I'm accountable and I've signed my name. And any employee who wants to do this is able to, and when someone sees this on the desk, that they know that they believe that they are liable for what happens within the school district. So I pass these down to the board if you'd like to use them. It certainly is voluntary. Within the Quad Cities, the 8 school districts, we have a special campaign this year for attendance. As we know, attendance is extremely important, and many times when we look at the averages for attendance, it really masks some of the underlying problems for students who are chronically absent. For example, a school could have 95% average attendance, but there could be 8 or 9% of the students in that school that are missing 10, 12, 16 days. And we all know when that happens that research says you just are not going to pass that grade, and your chances of dropping out are increased appreciably. So the United Way and Arconic have come together with a campaign. It's a Challenge 5, stress or strive for less than 5 days absent. And that's what we're asking people to do. 5 days for any reason, not 5 days unexcused or excused, but we're saying in any one school year you should not be absent more than 5 days. So I'll pass these cards down. You will see some advertising about it. There'll be a press conference on Wednesday where the mayors and the superintendents will get together to talk about it. But it's not just a one-day campaign. It's something which we will push throughout the school year with all of our schools. I think all of you know we had an increased requirement for 7th and 12th grade students to get their meningitis shots this year. It's been quite a challenge. In fact, on opening day of school, we had 500 students who had not done that as yet. And we informed people last spring. We continue to inform them, but the truth is some people just have a hard time getting that done because they don't have the money. It's quite expensive, or they don't know quite where to go. So we've spent a lot of time trying to make sure people understand where they can get the shots, how they can get free shots if they qualify. Genesis has really stepped up in a big way. Ken Crokin has the Genesis Foundation donating 100 shots to us. That's a lot of money. They're going to do that Wednesday. They're setting up in a pavilion at Genesis West to do this, and our schools are going to send those students who just can't get the shots because they can't afford it. So they really stepped up in a big way, and I certainly appreciate it. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion on the approval of the resolution for the sale of Lincoln Elementary School?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution. Whereas Davenport Community School District is the owner of certain real estate located at 318 East 7th Street, formerly known as Lincoln Elementary School, Davenport, Iowa, and more particularly described on Exhibit A attached here too. And whereas Davenport Community School District has received an agreement for sale of commercial real estate from DJ Land Company for the sale of said real estate for the sum of $730,000. And whereas Davenport Community School District is agreeable to selling the said real estate to DJ Land Company Incorporated, and it has had a public hearing on the proposed sale pursuant to Iowa Code Section 297.22. Now, therefore, the Board of Directors of the Davenport Community School District hereby adopts the following resolution. Resolved that the Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, state of Iowa, shall sell the real estate described above pursuant to an agreement for sale of commercial real estate. Further resolved that the President and Secretary are hereby authorized to execute and deliver an agreement for sale of commercial real estate and a quitclaim deed from the school district conveying all the school district's right, title, and interest in and to the above described real estate, and are further authorized to take such further actions as are necessary or desirable to complete said sale, and such actions are ratified and confirmed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the sale of certain real estate located at 318 East 7th Street, Davenport, Iowa, formerly known as Lincoln Elementary School. The notice was published in the Quad City Times on August 16th, 2017. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Nobody? Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director Snyder.
I think it's kind of exciting that we've got this proposal to sell this building. The longer we sit on this building, the more it directly diverts funds from the classroom. It takes general fund dollars to keep that building running, and those are general fund dollars that our students need in their classrooms. So this is exciting for me.
Anybody else? All right, I'll call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
No.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on the approval of the resolution for the sale of the Achievement Service Center?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the following resolution for the sale of the Achievement Service Center. Hold on, sorry. Whereas Davenport Community School District is the owner of certain real estate located at 1606 Brady Street, known as the Achievement Service Center, Davenport, Iowa, and more particularly described on Exhibit A, attached hereto. And whereas Davenport Community School District has received an agreement for sale of commercial real estate from Newberry Management Company for the sale of said real estate for the sum of $950,000. And whereas Davenport Community School District is agreeable to selling said real estate to Newberry Management Company and has held a public hearing on the proposed sale pursuant to Iowa Code Section 297.22. Now, therefore, the Board of Directors of the Davenport Community School District hereby adopts the following resolution. Resolved that the Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, State of Iowa, shall sell the real estate described above pursuant to an agreement for sale of commercial real estate. Further resolved that the President and Secretary are hereby authorized to execute and deliver an agreement for sale of commercial real estate and a quick claim deed for the school district conveying all of the school district's right, title, and interest in and to the above described real estate, and are further authorized to take such further actions as are necessary or described to complete or desired, to complete said real estate, and such actions are ratified and confirmed.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing of certain real estate located at 1606 Brady Street, Davenport, Iowa, known as the Achievement Service Center. The notice was published in the Quad City Times on August 16th, 2017. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of a budget plan?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board accept and approve the outline for the 5-year budget plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, we'll start discussion with the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will let our Chief Financial Officer explain this in detail. There's a couple reasons why we're providing this. As you know, we're in the middle of a 3-year budget plan, and I am proposing that we take the current information we know about our budget, about the state budget, about enrollment projections, and put that into a 5-year budget plan. As you know, I have used during our 3-year budget plan the premise that I'd be taking $2.7 million, or equivalent to $175 per student, out of our reserves, and that exceeds our unspent balance. At this time, we're at a point in our reserves where I'm suggesting that we don't take any more out of reserves for reasons that Marcia will talk about, and then specifically it's about things that are happening in the state. But essentially, we spent down our reserves to the point that now I am recommending that we use our holiday insurance and use that to begin to balance our budget. So she will talk about that. The other reason that I'm suggesting that we do this now is because sometime in the fall we will have a reconciliation of our budget for last year, and it'll show how much we have spent, if we've exceeded our authority, and I'm sure this year, like last year, we'll be asked to go before the SBRC, the School Budget Review Committee. When we do that, what Marcia is going to show you tonight is what we will actually present to them. It will be in much more detail, much fuller detail, but essentially it will show that after a number of years that we will in fact have a positive balance in our spending authority. So I would like for her to make that presentation. As a companion piece, I provided you some broad categories of reduction, 5-year budget plan. I don't want to discuss those tonight. I'm just showing you that these are things that we have to consider. In fact, they're about the same things I've had on the 3-year plan, but I just want to remind people the sort of things we have to look at in order to make adjustments based on our projection of falling enrollment, and the projection of the state is not going to come forth with anything what we need in the way of increases to fund education. So, Marcia, would you please go ahead and make your explanation?
What I wanted to start out with are the assumptions that took place in order to come up with these projections, which I think is really important. And we start out with SSA, or Supplemental State Aid. We used to call it allowable growth, how much more we're going to get from the state. And what I have down for 2018-19 is 0. I'm actually hearing that we could probably expect a reduction next year. But we're kind of taking a better viewpoint and saying that hopefully they will just keep our funding steady. So we used a 0% amount of supplemental state aid. For the following years, we're hoping that we can get up to 1%. And so that's what we used in our projection model, is that we would get a 1% increase in what our per pupil cost is. The next assumption was enrollment change. And what we did is we're using the state projections. The state every year will send us projections on what they think our enrollment will be for the next 5 years. And so for 2018-19, they have that we will be down 351 students. For 2019-20, they have us down 147, in the years after that down 125. So we plug those into our formula, figuring that's the best information we have from the state, and so we put that in. I also wanted to emphasize in our assumptions that we will be going to the School Budget Review Committee for requests for allowable growth, and we do this every year. And those areas are the dropout prevention funding. That is part of our annual budget, but the School Budget Review Committee has to approve that. Our ELL cost, we get 4 years of waiting built into the funding formula. We say that our students are in that program for longer than 4 years. And so we always apply to the SBRC saying, here's the additional costs we incur because our students are in the program longer than that. And every year we've gotten that approved. Our open enrollment and excessive ELL cost, it's the open enrollment for students that we didn't get to count last year, so they give us the funding this year. And then the excessive costs are any cost beyond the waiting that they give us for the entire program. And typically that runs over $1 million. So we go to them, and again, we have never been denied for that. And then our special ed deficit each year, and we do project that we will end fiscal 17 in a deficit, and then the years coming up that we will have a deficit every one of those years. So those 4 areas we will be asking for additional allowable growth in, and that was built into this model. So we move on to the reductions. And Dr. Tate had shared with you earlier a 3-year plan for budget reductions. And so if you look under 2017-18, that target was $6 million. We estimate that we're going to come up with at least $6.2 million. But what that does is it also includes using the $2.7 million in reserve. And that's what we had done last year, and we had done for the previous couple of years. And we built that into 2017-18 also. In 2018-19, our target was $7.2 million. We estimate that we're going to come up with $7 million. However, that does include taking $3.4 million additional reductions beyond what Dr. Tate had shared with you. And that also includes then taking 2 insurance holidays. In 1920, the target was 5.8. We're estimating 6.7. Again, that includes taking additional reductions beyond what the 3-year proposal was, and it does include taking an additional insurance holiday. In the next 3 years, we had not shared with you what reductions would be, but we are estimating in order to come out on the positive side of our spending authority that we're going to have to cut $3.4 million each of those next 3 years. What I provided for you on the second page was our unspent balance estimates, because that's what we have to be very cognizant of. We have not filed our state report for 2016-17, but we're estimating that we are going to end with a negative balance of $6.2 million. We are estimating that we're going to improve that in 2017-18 to $3.5 million, in 2018-19 to just $1.1 million, and then come out on the positive in 2019-20. But the only way that we're going to come up with these numbers is if the reductions that we mentioned on the first page actually come to fruition and we are able to put those into place. The expenditures and staffing portion of the report I put in here because this is information in the format that we had to use to go to the School Budget Review Committee last year. When they ask us for additional information from the district, they want to know what are your expenditures doing and what is your staffing doing. So I went ahead and put that in here to give you an idea of what we will have to be reporting. For 17-18, we're saying our expenditures are reduced by 1.19%, and we'll have a staffing reduction of 1.08% or 26 FTE. And then you can see that in all the ensuing years, we say what our reduction in expenditures are going to be and what our reduction in staff is going to be. You'll notice in 2021, our expenditures start to increase by 1.5%, and then the same in the next 2 years. And we don't have any reduction in staffing built into that because we haven't developed the plan for those 3 years yet. As I put as a note on the bottom again to mention that our audit has not taken place yet, and we have not filed our state report. That's done on September 15th. So then we'll know how we actually did end fiscal 17. If it comes out any different than what we projected here, obviously these numbers can change, either for the better or for the worse. But I just want to make sure that you know that these numbers can change depending on what that final report is. And that also 2017-18 is the only year that we included using the reserve as part of our reductions to help us with the budget.
Is that it?
That's it.
Did you have more, Superintendent Tate?
No, let's see what questions or discussion the board has.
All right. Is there any additional discussion? Director Hayes.
I have a question. Hypothetically, Marcia, if there was a 2% increase, how would it affect the bottom line of these numbers versus the 1% that you have projected?
That would depend on what our enrollment does. The two kind of play hand in hand. We could have a 2% increase, but if we still lose that 350 some students, we'll probably be at budget guarantee of 1%. Okay. So the two really play hand in hand.
Okay, thank you.
Director Snyder.
What are the ramifications to the district of taking 2 vacation holidays in 1 year? I know in the past we've used them as a crutch where we'd take 1. But I don't recall taking 2 in a year, and we have 2 scheduled for the next 3 years.
Yeah, I don't believe that we have taken 2 in a year. Even after we take these insurance holidays, what we have planned, we will still have an adequate reserve in the self-insurance fund to fund at least a year, if not a year and a half worth of claims. So we'd be well above what our requirement is.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Director Kluhl.
Well, one hardly knows where to begin with this outline. After 16 years on the board, I'd hoped to leave it in better financial shape than it was when I came in, but this is not good, of course, and you in the audience must be wondering, what is this board doing? Fiddling while Rome burns? You know, there's some of you, Vera and Henry, who have been at our committee of the whole meetings pretty frequently and have heard the level of discussion that this board has had and what Dr. Tate has presented to us in terms of things that we're doing to try to preclude impacting students in the classroom. And you all don't have the information I think that we have in front of us here today, but it's increasing class sizes again. It's reducing programs that are important to our students. And it's getting to the point where it's fundamental education. It's no longer the frills. It's no longer the nice things that you like to have. It's starting to hit the basics. And while we have hundreds of millions of dollars going to corporate relief, tax relief in Waukee, school districts across the state are looking at outlines much like we are tonight. And our students are the infrastructure, as Bob Babcock talked about earlier, the infrastructure of the economy of the state of Iowa. And if we don't take care of our students, if we don't provide them the kinds of skills and training to be future Iowans and our economic engine of growth, we're to use the Iowa term, we're eating our seed corn. So this is hard. But I'm convinced, as Dr. Tate has talked to us and explained to us, that we do have a plan. An organization doesn't move forward without a plan. And as desperate as this plan looks, it is a plan to move forward. And I appreciate moving forward to a 5-year plan versus the 3-year. I hope that the SSA numbers are very conservative. But having worked with the legislature these last 3 years, I'm not at all confident that they will be over what you have listed here. So we will carry on, but under duress, as our superintendent is under attack from the state. Our students are as well, with the budget that we're looking at here.
Director DeSalvo.
Marcia, the additional reductions that start in 2018-19, have those been thought at all, or do we have any kind of ideas of where that's going to come from at this point?
Well, we have our original 3-year plan,
Right,
so
right.
that's where we'll start, but we're going to have to add some things. And
Right.
again, that's why I gave you these broad categories. Increasing class size, continue to do that. We're looking at the possibility of having a completely new system of grades, for example, K through 6, a 7 and 8, and a 9 through 12, to see if that will save us some school buildings and consolidate administration. And that would be repurposing schools and sharing leadership in some of our schools, increasing walk zones, capping salaries so it stays at the same of the supplemental state aid, changing bell times to maximize the use of buses. And we have a study right now we're doing, and what we said was, what's the cheapest way we can transport? Not the best way, not the best for families, the cheapest way. So again, we've just got to look at all those sort of things, and we will, later on this year, we'll look at the plan we have, and we'll come back to you, to the board, and say, here's what our plan is for next year, and we'll just keep that rolling for you.
Just a comment. I read an article today, ironically, about an approval that the state just granted to Apple to come to Waukee. I think they're given about $208 million, if I'm not mistaken, to entice them to come to our state. And everybody out there that's old enough to vote, I think Mr. Reek kind of guided us to this point, but these are things that we need to think about. We are literally taking money out of the pockets of every student in the state of Iowa and giving them to these big companies. We want growth in Iowa, but we're not going to receive it if we don't support our education system. And we're failing miserably right now as a state, and we have got to do something about it, and it is immediate. So it's so frustrating, I can't even tell you. Thank you. Thanks, Marcia.
Any additional discussion? Well, I've got a few comments. Superintendent Tate, during your opening remarks, I missed something, and I took it down as a quote, and it was towards the end of your opening remarks, and you said the state is not, and I had it underlined, going to come up with, do you remember what you were saying right then?
No, but probably meant something like the support we need to
Okay.
operate as a
right.
district.
That's good enough. My goodness. I've got exclamation marks and question marks all over my notes here. This is just appalling. I can't even fathom putting together this plan where we're affecting every one of our students. We're affecting all of our employees. We're affecting our whole community because of this. The assumptions that you've made, I accept them as being realistic and conservative. But it seems to me that with all the work that we have done, that Director Kluhl has done for forever, and as he pointed out, he's been trying during these last 16 years to make sure that we were in a better place now than we were when he started, and yet he can't even acknowledge that fiscally. I'm sure there are other things that we have made improvements on. The state projections, and I thought, I wonder how they come up with those numbers. And I don't know whether you know that or not, but they are what they are. And that minus 125 in years 3, 4, and 5, that just seems like an engineer's kind of assumption on what's probably going to happen. And so for everybody out there, I gotta say, this is really, really frustrating for the board, because the board has that sense of, what do we do? We're going to have less money. We're going to have less students. And the state, I must say that I have to express my frustration again at what I consider to be an inequality in the way that the funding is allocated to students across the state. And I think that it's really too bad that our state doesn't embrace equality when it comes to per pupil spending as something that is fair and should be part of what we do. If this was true, this district would not have had to take that $175 per student. The superintendent would not have risked everything to take that $175 per student, over the last 2 or 3 years, which is millions of dollars. And yet the state continues to say, as Mr. Reek brought up here, well, big deal. You don't have enough pull when it comes to legislators, and it's just not going to happen. And frankly, I'm at one of those points again where I believe the legislature cannot do it. And I know Director Kluhl has tried over the years to moderate my ups and downs. Sometimes I have hope that they'll do it, and right now I have zero hope. I have zero confidence in our legislature that they can go ahead and make a change this year. And I think that's really too bad. With respect to equality in per pupil spending, I appreciate the superintendent and the CFO in presenting this budget, but it's really, really sad. And to take those insurance holidays, the insurance holidays are not a budget modification. They're a one-time change, and we're taking several one-time changes to try to affect our budget, which is very frustrating. But thank you very much for your work, and thank you for the presentation. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
No.
Director Kluel,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding Scott County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan priorities?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board approve administration's recommendation on the following. The Davenport Community School District recommends no changes to the Scott County Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan priorities.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Snyder.
I'm assuming this is purely for review purposes. When we passed this last year, there was something in there that said we'll review regularly. It doesn't really dictate when regularly is, but I'm assuming that's what this is since there's no changes recommended.
Yes, this is a periodic review, and this is not of our plan. FEMA reinterpreted a rule and asked the parties that are members of each regional plan to have a public review of the priorities of the regional plan. The regional plan here is managed by the Bi-State Regional Commission. Scott County, of course, manages our plan. Once you acknowledged our plan last year, then the County Board of Supervisors acknowledged that it became a part of the Unified Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Because of a recent, like I said, reinterpretation by FEMA, they ask all of the regions to conduct a public review of the priorities, and that's simply what you're doing. And we think this work was done recently enough, and the priorities, as stated in the regional plan, still reflect the priorities that the region should have. So we recommend no change.
Anything else? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order from TNT Tuck Pointing?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve administration recommendation for the change order for TNT Truck Point for the credit at Central for $26,607 and added scope of work at Monroe for $96,537 for the net change of an additional $69,930.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
We just keep getting them, whatever.
All right. I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
No.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of policies?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board approve the policy committee's recommendation on the following policies. 103.11, community use of school district buildings, sites, and equipment. 304.10, GASB 54. 105.10, parental guardian involvement. 401.44, employee substance abuse policy. 401.47, employee substance abuse testing policy. 401.48, drug-free workplace policy. 105.02, sex offenders. 504.01 discipline policy, 103.16 advertising and use of commercial support and services, 401.51 organizations, 103.13 loan of school equipment, 203.03 administrative latitude and absence of policy, 203.04 review of administrative decisions, 203.06 administrators professional organizations, 203.07 graduate school attendance for administrators, 203.08 vacations, 203.09 evaluation of administrators, 203.11 dissemination of policy, and 203.13 collaborative decision making.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All these policies and there's nothing?
We discussed them.
Are there any, Director Snyder, that you would point out that are policies that we need to address, or is everything pretty
No, we pretty
easy to
well hashed
understand?
them out at the last meeting, and most of these are no changes recommended.
All right. Give you guys a few more seconds. All right, if there's no, whoa, Director
You
Kluhl.
can't with this bunch of stuff go by without saying something. And this is, I'm not gonna get into the philosophical stuff. I'm just wondering, on page 25, we talk about the use, possession, manufacture, distribution of tobacco, nicotine delivery systems. Nicotine delivery systems, perhaps this is not the exact place, but one of the prohibited items is tobacco, alcohol, and nicotine anti-smoking devices. And I'm wondering about that. So if a kid he's got a patch, he's trying to give up smoking, he's wearing a patch, would that be not allowed?
I would say no. In parentheses, this is all from legal. In parentheses, under nicotine delivery systems, it says including electronic cigarettes or similar devices.
I'm looking at it looks like number 3, but it's crossed out. Products for smoking cessation. And that just seemed odd to me. So amongst electronic cigarettes, liquor, beer, substance, illegal drugs, we include products for smoking cessation. Well, even Julie thinks that's a little odd.
Whatever Wendy says, I'm going. She's for you.
It's not a big deal, but it stands out. And I wondered if there was a rationale.
No, this was all done by legal, so.
Well, as Mr. Johansson says, we don't always agree with everything legal says. It's not going to stop me from voting for it, but it seems odd, out of place. Waldo. Something's wrong. Waldo's there somewhere. And this is Waldo. There he is, looking at us.
Well, thank you. I'm sure the policy committee will reconsider that if they ever have time.
Thank you for that affirmation.
Hush off.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? All right. We will call for the vote. And the vote is to approve all of those policies, 103.11, 304.10, 105.10, 401, 44, 401, 47, 401, 48, 105.02, 504.01, 103.16, 401, 51, 103.13, 20303, 20304, 20306, 20307, 20308, 20309, 20311, 20313. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Kluel.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
I let you down.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Move into discussion items. Looks like we only have one this evening. Energy efficiency update, Superintendent Tate.
I'll turn to Mr. Maloney, who has done a wonderful job with assistance from his department to put together something which will be meat for our discussion, and we're interested in seeing is this the direction that the board wants us to continue marching. Mike?
Last March, we presented an update to the long-range facility plan to the board, and you told us that you would like to see us put more emphasis and energy, into energy efficiency in order that we might save general fund money. We've done several things in the past several months to implement that. We did present to you an amended plan back late spring that showed a emphasis on energy management projects over the next at that time 2.5 years. Now it would be about 2 more years to complete the work that we are currently planning, and to do that in a way that would save as much general fund as possible and include renewables, solar, others, perhaps more geothermal, as economically as possible. So we started by developing and implementing a comprehensive energy management plan. That was included in your board packet, and you can see as you look through it, it has several goals, priorities, and so forth, and I'll mention a few of them here in a moment. I want to also mention that, and I'll say this again here, this is a partnership with Mid-American. Derek Hoffer is here again, whom you've met before. Debbie Heitman, who joined us in April as the energy management specialist. I don't know that board members have met other than President Johansson, who already had an acquaintance with Ms. Heitman. She had formerly been working with mechanical contractors in the Quad Cities, and is now has helped immensely with the development of the comprehensive energy management plan. We have been working with Derek and the Clear Result team and so forth to implement the energy efficiency projects as quickly as possible, and we've continued to look at renewables and to try to find a way to see how we might put solar into our portfolio. The primary goals of the comprehensive energy management plan I do want to mention. The first is to promote energy efficiency throughout all facilities via cost-effective programs and initiatives, to promote and encourage energy awareness and energy-related training of all employees, to integrate the district energy management plan directly into the curriculum wherever appropriate, and I should mention Melissa Trimble has been doing that for some years, our science curriculum specialist, to monitor, trend, and review facility energy usage and develop corrective actions if energy use falls outside of the bounds of performance goals. So we have performance goals for each building, and we'll monitor and compare actual utilization to the goals and take corrective action. We're going to establish key performance indicators for energy use and assign accountabilities across the district. We will develop, implement, and meet energy usage cost reduction targets. So we don't simply want to reduce energy cost. We're going to set targets, and we're going to have goals, and we're going to measure performance. We'll maintain a close working relationship with the local utility companies, provide regular data reporting to district management, to building principals, and to the Sustainability Council on a regular basis. And finally, it is to introduce the use of renewable energy sources on all campuses as quickly as economically feasible. So those are the comprehensive energy management plan goals. Now we are are establishing key performance indicators, and I wanted to mention the district, as you know, has had a long history of attention to energy management, has been an Energy Star district since the 90s. Each building has had an Energy Star rating. We also are participating in the State Department of Economic Development's benchmarking program, where all of our utility data goes in to a database, and it's compared to other districts throughout the state. And in that benchmarking system, when you look currently at energy cost per square foot, we are the second lowest energy cost per square foot school district in the system. When you look at energy utilization index, this is a calculated number that takes into consideration more than simply energy use per square foot. Our energy utilization index is the best in the state, number one. Now, when you look at the benchmarking, it's a calculated number. We're not the best in the state, and that shows that we still have room to improve over where we are for where we could be. And so this whole energy efficiency program and the projects that we have currently underway are going to move us up in this benchmarking index calculation in the Department of Economic Development's database. You know, we have a partnership with Mid-American Energy, Clear Result, and with Trane, our building controls contractor. We are in the midst of assessing all of our facilities for what energy efficiency measures, or EEMs, might be undertaken at each building. This is an effort that is done by Mid-American's contractor, Clear Result. We assess all of the facilities, and then we choose to implement those energy efficiency measures that have the best returns on investment and that will provide the best return to the general fund in terms of reduction of energy costs. We also are organizing these projects in a manner that maximizes the incentives and the rebates that are available from Mid-American under the programs that they have established, and there are several different ones that work in different ways. So with the help of Derek and his team, we're organizing projects in a way that will provide us the very best opportunity to get incentives and rebates from Mid-American. The plan that we offered you in the capital plan, the long-range facility management plan, will invest about $7.5 million plus the rebates and incentives over the next 2 years. And our goal, as a result of those investments in energy efficiency measures, is to save somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million in general fund spending on utilities after the program is fully implemented, and so that savings would first occur in FY 2021. Currently, we are implementing the EEMs. They're underway after the retro-commissioning, the RCX at West High School. You have seen all of that data some months back. Those are now underway and are calculated to provide a first-year savings of $60,000 to $65,000. For some buildings, some of the smaller buildings, they are not eligible for the retro-commissioning program. Rather, they go through a different process called the Express Building Tune-Up, or EBTU. There's also incentives, rebates for that work that comes from Mid-American. It's part of the same process with Clear Result, their consultant, and ours going in to do these. The targeted savings that we expect to derive from the Express Building Tune-Up at Mid-City, Smart, Sudlow, and Wilson is about $40,000 a year. So we're trying to get to $100,000 a year savings this first year in this program. Now, as we complete all of the Clear Result assessments and begin the recommended retro-commissionings as quickly as possible, we have budgeted over $3.7 million available in 18-19 and over $3.2 million available in 19-20, targeting that goal of $800,000 to $1 million in general fund savings. During the current fiscal year, many of the projects in the long-range plan were already underway, already planning. We have a little over $500,000 that we're investing in the initial projects that we first had gotten underway. Since we last spoke, Clear Result has hired an additional person who has spent a good part of his time in support of Davenport schools. and they have put a lot of effort into speeding up the initial assessment so that through the next several months, as we get these assessments done and we select the energy efficiency measures, we'll be putting the contracts together to implement those projects as quickly as possible in the new year when the additional funds are available. We have continued as well to look at renewables and look at ways, power purchase agreement, lease backs, other things. I'm having, in fact, daily conversations with vendors and others about, is there a way forward for solar? We still think that somehow there's a way that solar could be an economical part of the overall portfolio. So we haven't abandoned that idea altogether. We're still working on it. We also, as we do renovations and additions to mechanical systems at our buildings in the future, we'll continue to evaluate which ones of those are appropriately situated to consider adding geothermal heating and cooling. There may be more geothermal projects in the future. If you look at that long-range plan, there's some major mechanical upgrades, boiler replacements, things like that planned over the 10 years at different buildings. And we would analyze each of those buildings and the available groundwater and all of the things that one must do to determine, is it an appropriate location for geothermal? We currently have 14. So we also, as I mentioned, will be looking at the solar photovoltaic arrays. That could be outright ownership, it could be power purchase agreements, it could be leasebacks, and who knows, the market may come up with even other mechanisms as time goes by. I can also say that the cost of the solar panels themselves, it continues to come down. Of course, we know that the future tax credits and other things that go into this calculation may be at risk, but we always have to operate under whatever rules we have available today, and we'll find out if tax credits and other incentives for solar changes in the future. And that's what I had to present for you, and I or Derek, Debbie, or Joe, or Eric, all of us who've been working on that would be happy to try to answer any questions. Also happy to hear your discussion and guidance.
Thank you. Director Snyder.
I just have one question. When looking at these charts, there was two charts. One of them was benchmarking key performance indicators, and the other one, I guess, actually is titled the same thing. One of them we're number one. One of them we are number two. My question is, we hear a lot about the Waco School District in regards to their solar, yet they're nowhere to be found on any of these charts for energy efficiency.
You know what, I'll have to check and see if they are participating in the benchmarking program. It may be that Waco is not a participant in the program.
Okay.
And so their data wouldn't be reported.
Thank you.
Director DeSalvo. Well, it's all right. I called on you.
Thank you. Sorry, Lynn. So thank you for this information. The more information for me, the better. It helps really educate this. And there's a lot of folks in the audience tonight, and we're talking about huge budget reductions, and then we're talking here about spending some money, and understand it's two different buckets of money. So we have a certain, I'll call it a bucket, that's my very technical accounting term. We have a bucket that we can use for building and structure, and then we have the general fund. The general fund is the one that we continue to struggle with. And where this gets very complex and these things kind of overlap is that if we make the investment in buildings and structures and things to be more efficient, we save on the utility bills. And utility bills are paid out of the general fund, which is where books come from and teacher salaries. So it gets very complex and very overlapping in some cases. So we're not spending money that we would be using to spend on teachers. And that goes for the changes going on with buildings and structures throughout that you'll see around the city and our different properties. So that I just wanted to share. But then my real question and my continued request, and I hate to make you go to a lot of work, but what's really going to help me to see a clear picture is when these projects are done, where are we at with, okay, so let's say West High School, when that project is done, what kind of savings have we seen from these projects? And then how does that compare if we do solar there? So let's say we look at the solar plan and they come in and they evaluate and say, this is what your cost is going to be. And we know what our costs are. That's what will help me make those decisions. again, I don't want you to go to a whole lot of work, but building by building is what will help. Because some buildings may be great for it, and some it may not be so good for us to move to alternative energy supply. So that's going to help me make those choices. So thank you.
Director Hayes.
Again, I also thank you for going into this a little deeper. It is helpful. But could you please tell me what RCX is? What does that
That's a
stand for?
process called retro-commissioning, where a building is very thoroughly examined. Every single mechanical device and light and switch and so forth is examined, inventoried, assessed for its current operating condition. Is it doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing? During that process at West, we discovered a great many things that needed to be repaired or attended to. We discovered some things that are out of adjustment. We discovered some things where replacement of a standard motor drive with a variable frequency drive would pay for that drive in a couple of years. So the retro commissioning process is where we do a thorough examination of the current operating state of all of the systems and discover everything that's not just quite exactly right and correct it.
What does that X stand for?
Well, the commissioning process of new buildings has been designated as CX by the Commissioning Association. I don't know why they picked X, and retro commissioning has been designated or given an initial of RCX.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Anything else? Director Gosa.
I have a couple questions. So how much does this whole deal cost to get us these answers here?
It varies building by building. The RCX at West High School, I believe, was in a little over $40,000.
Just to figure out if we
Mid-American
need to-
will rebate half of the RCX
Okay.
cost in that particular one.
Okay, so, and then where does the money come from that pays for these studies or whatever?
This is PEPAL money primarily. Could be SAVE, but this is PEPAL this particular year.
Okay. So we're taking money from the buildings that we should be doing these upgrades to figure out that we need to update light fixtures, and I mean, you should know if the stuff's outdated. That's a lot of money to be 40 grand for one building. How many buildings do we have?
31?
That's a lot of money.
Any additional discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I'm not sure that I understood Director Gosa's question. So it costs us to have the audits done in addition to then whatever they suggest, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The initial assessment cost money to have the staff,
Come out.
engineering folks and technicians go in and take measurements and do all the things that have to be done to determine what would be the best energy efficiency measures to undertake.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Director Kluhl.
Mike, I don't know if I shared it with you. University of Northern Iowa has an energy review team. It's AmeriCorps and students, and they're federally funded. There's no charge to local businesses. I know Iowa City and one other school district are using them, and I wondered if we had looked into that as a possibility.
I'm not aware of that. I'll have to do some investigation.
I'll send you that information. Just as just kind of a thought, I mean, we've really slowed this process down from when we first started it. And I cannot help but appreciate, the rather slow and cumbersome process that we're going through to make sure that we put the kind of structures out there in our buildings that we actually need and don't overbuild. But I'm wondering what are we missing in terms of federal rebates? Federal rebates are not probably going to get getting any better. Are those a significant, or could they potentially be a significant part of our cost savings in this process of putting up solar arrays?
I guess first let me say that on the commissioning side and the rebates and incentives that are currently available are through the utility, primarily Mid-American, and it's programs that they've developed to encourage us all to save energy. The rebates and incentives are actually quite substantial, and over the past several years, I reported a couple of years ago, we've received over $2 million in rebates and incentives. And I don't know of federal ones. When it comes to solar, we know that private investors get tax credits and accelerated depreciation and things like that. And if we find a mechanism for a private investor to develop a solar array on our behalf, that would lower the cost of the development, and those savings would be passed through to us in the form of lower kilowatt hour rate for the energy produced. We would go through for a solar project something like we did this past year, where there was exhaustive research by multiple parties to really explore, does this make sense for the district, and provide you with the kind of data that Director DeSalvo just mentioned, that you would say, I feel confident in making the decision based on the data I have. We look for grants, incentives, awards. I actively search for those opportunities. Mid-American staff probably is aware more so than anyone of what programs are available. Also, I should mention that internally our team feels like, and we often remark, we are proceeding as fast as is humanly possible to implement this program since your decision in March. I mentioned Clear Results as added staff that is committed to Davenport most of their time. So our team feels like that we're going as quickly as humanly possible.
Well, with that, I mean, what more can I ask? If you're moving as fast as humanly possible, I mean, what more can I ask? And I'll leave that up to Director Johansson, because I think he may have some ideas about that.
Is there any additional discussion? Director Snyder.
I guess I have one comment on Director Gosa's question in regards to spending the money for the evaluations at the buildings. If I'm not mistaken, that wasn't an operational decision. That was a board directive that the board said we want to have these evaluations done so we know where to spend the money. So I guess I just wanted to clarify there that that was actually a board decision.
And they are a necessary part of the whole incentive and rebate program. In order to qualify, you need to go through that process in order to enter it into the Mid-American program of incentives.
Anything else? Well, Director Clough, you're right. I got a couple of comments. On this expenditure, I don't think the board authorized $1.2 million to do evaluations, which would have been, follow me a little bit, when Director Gosa asks the question, 30-some buildings, and you said approximately 40-some thousand for the evaluation, you were not meaning that it was 40-some thousand per building.
No. Some of the elementary schools, for example, were 10,000.
What's the total amount?
Well, I don't know, because I only know the retro commissioning cost or the study cost for those buildings which we have completed. And as I mentioned earlier, that about 50% of that cost is rebated by Mid-American.
I understand that, but if I don't believe that it was a board decision to spend a certain amount of money on all that. I think that was just something that, and I thought when you had originally represented it, the Clear Results evaluations were being done at no cost, and then there's an assessment later on that's done after the Clear Results.
If Clear Results recommends a retro commissioning, then as they did for West, that was a fee. That was the $40,000 retro commissioning assessed study, if you will. That was the full-blown study. The assessment part, and I want to be clear, on the EBTUs includes much of the programming, things like that, the controls tweaks is included in that cost. It's not simply study cost. In the express building tune-up, much of the work is done as a part of the assessment, so it's included.
When you presented back in March, I think what you said was Clear Result was going to take close to a year to do assessments on about 30 buildings.
Yes, and they have added staff and have sped that up, and we're expecting, Derek or Debbie, do you recall when we expect to get done?
I think they're hoping for December, January timeframe.
Yeah. So
September?
December,
like,
January.
Like next month, like in 4 weeks.
December or January?
December.
Yes.
And then after that, then we have to have another evaluation. If they say we need to do this retro commissioning, then it's going to take a few months of additional time plus an additional $40-some thousand for them to go back in, make another assessment of a building, say like West, correct?
Well, and those would only be middle schools and high schools that are over 100,000 square feet.
Sure, but still, what we're saying is that to get the assessment done, say at Central, it could be, let's say it's January plus 4 months, it could be April before we even get a result that then we could act on, which means we're probably going to be out into 20 or 21 before we can do anything because of our budget. Is that correct?
Well, most of the implementation money starts in July of 18 and then is in 2 fiscal years, 18-19 and 19-20.
I understand, but you can't put money to something, it sounds like, unless Clear Results says that we can do it and Mid-America agrees to it.
Well,
So-
we can, but the EEMs that they recommend are the ones that have incentives and rebates and so forth associated with them. We could do other things if we chose.
But right now, we are choosing not to, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the common sense kind of activities like putting in LEDs, climate controls, those types of activities, the way I understand it, we are not doing right now. Even though we could be saving energy, we are not doing them because those common sense recommendations haven't been made by Clear Results yet, gone through the vetting process through Mid-America and come back to us. Is that correct?
No, in many cases, we are doing LED retrofits in gyms, in auditoriums, in cafeterias. Those are pretty straightforward thing. There's a rebate per light fixture associated with them. We don't need to make them part of a bigger study, and we are doing them very systematically all the time. Other improvements to building controls, other things are underway constantly. There are any number of things that are being done in addition to or apart from Mid-American's rebate program.
Okay, so so if that's the case, then do we have the money right now? And are you saying we are not replacing any of the T6s or whatever they are, or T8s, or incandescent bulbs? Everything has already been changed over to LED. Is that correct?
No, it has not.
That's not correct.
What we are doing is those circumstances where we can replace a fixture, the metal halides in gyms replaced with an LED fixture, that is actively underway. We're doing several, I can't even tell you how many per year, and there's a plan to complete all of those. For those, we get a rebate per fixture from Mid-American. For the much larger things that are a part of this incentive program, where for West, roughly a little over half of the total cost of doing it all was covered by rebates and incentives from Mid-American.
When you say rebates and incentives from Mid-American, you make it sound as if it's an altruistic thing that they're just giving us the money. Isn't that money, where, do you know where the money comes from that Mid-American pays?
Yes, we
for?
all have a little line item on our utility bill that goes into a fund, and that fund is used by Mid-American to provide incentive and rebate programs for people to reduce their energy consumption.
Right. So it's actually money that the district has paid in that it can get back if it decides to do these things, right?
Yes.
But if it decides not to, then those rebates will go somewhere else. Other people will use them up. And when the rebates, when that money isn't available, then too bad.
Yes,
right?
if we did the energy efficiency stuff on our own and didn't ask for the incentives and rebates, that we could do that. But other people would get the incentives. So the incentives are provided for things that we should do anyway to lower our energy consumption.
But the rebates also have been decreasing over the past 2 years at a rate, if I remember right, of about 15% per year. Is that correct?
Yes, the rebates on light fixtures in particular have been decreasing.
Right. And so my expectation, whether anybody else has that expectation, is that the rebates will continue to decrease and will probably eventually go away.
I think that's likely.
Okay. And so if we wait long enough, then we'll just lose our chance at those rebates, or we will decrease the amount of rebate that we can get by delaying the implementation of some of those activities.
Now, I also, there's another complication that I need to make you aware. We have had guidance from the Department of Education telling us that you may not simply replace the bulb because the bulb is a supply and that is not a capital project. And we have asked our legal counsel for a legal opinion about that. And we, Mr. Davidson believes that if we do it as a project wholesale, the entire building, that it's a retrofit project and it is not a supply. We have asked him to write us a formal opinion, and that is underway. So we have not simply swapped out bulbs without, we've replaced an entire fixture. That clearly you can do. The guidance we have received in the past from Department of Ed said you may not simply replace the bulbs with an LED bulb because the bulbs are supplies and not eligible. So that has confounded our ability to do exactly what you've said, the simple thing of go change all the bulbs. Why don't you just do that? That's the reason why we haven't done that.
You're saying we haven't done it because the Department of Education said replacing a bulb doesn't constitute a capital project?
Yes, that PEPAL funds are not eligible to be spent in that manner.
I don't want to get into a debate. You made a comment, and I see energy conservation totally separate from solar. Do you?
Yes, for a
Okay.
number of reasons.
All right. And I believe that most of your presentation tonight was on energy conservation. However, you mentioned solar, and I tried to take it as a quote. And I think you said, we haven't abandoned solar altogether. I think that was pretty much what you said.
Maybe unartful. I was trying to indicate that we haven't given up on the idea that there's a mechanism to have a solar portfolio.
Even given up, I mean, however you want to phrase it, my interpretation that I wrote underneath your quote was that it sounds like we have basically given up on solar. And the reason I say that is that when you phrase it that way, and when I think about even though you say you're working as fast as is humanly possible, it seems to me like we're languishing in implementing energy conservation measures. I mean, I'm just stating the way I see it. I believe that the tax credits will likely go away, the 30% federal tax credit and the 50% of the federal tax credit that's a state tax credit. I believe that'll go away also. I believe that when those go away, it'll make solar much less likely to be implemented, and that if we delay it long enough, we just won't do it. And I think we're probably within a couple of years, and the way you're describing all this, that it's going to take us till 20 or 21 just to get our energy efficiencies kind of completed. That $7 or $8 million you're talking about is all in energy efficiencies, or does it include solar?
It could include solar.
Could, but
there's not an earmark for solar, and I want to mention that at about 6:30 this very evening, I received a proposal from a solar company of a way they think we might have a solar portfolio. I haven't even opened it, but I have been unartful, evidently, and when I say we haven't abandoned it, we're actively working on how can we make this happen. It's not simply haven't abandoned it, we're actively working on how do we make solar or other renewables a part of our energy portfolio. As we work through the assessment pieces and the energy efficiency measures that are covered by incentives and rebates, and we start to build the implementation program this winter for next year when the first 3.7 million is available, we see, well, we'll better understand how much of that will go to Mid-American incentive eligible projects, how much of that might go towards solar, and what we would first like to do with solar is figure out how to get the private investment side to work so that we don't have to pay full freight for solar, because it's 40-50% more. You see what I mean?
well,
we can't take
absolutely, but
advantage of the tax advantages.
we can't, and right now, the private investors would go ahead and do that, and the district could realize savings in its general fund, but we've made the decision to not do that. The actively seeking solar, I think, is something that only the administration can do, because, and I haven't really looked at our policy lately, but I've thought about how does this happen because of our policy regarding unsolicited proposals. And I think there's a $3 million threshold, if I recollect, and I don't know how that all works with something like
Well,
this.
I have not solicited proposals. I think it would be the administration's responsibility to find out, is there a market mechanism that might work? And if so, issue a request for proposals. And if those proposals made sense to us, we would bring them to the board and say, we recommend that we take this power purchase agreement or this leaseback arrangement or whatever it might be. So we're out there actively trying to see what does the market have to offer. And if the market says, well, we've got something to offer here that we think would make sense for Davenport schools, then we have to turn that into a formal solicitation, comply with public procurement regulations, and then if we have a proposal that makes sense as beneficial to the district, we need to recommend it to the board.
I want to go back to clear results for a minute. In March, when they had 30 audits, I think is what they're called, to do, and it was going to take the better part of a year, I figured it was, like 2 a month that they would be able to do something like that. And I think that you expressed that they had a lot of other customers and they got more stuff to be worried about than just the Davenport district. And I thought about that. I've done those types of audits, and I've thought it doesn't take me 2 weeks to do an audit of a grade school or an elementary school, even a high school. And what I wondered, as I think about the delays, I've wondered if it wouldn't be better for the district to hire our own person and have them authorized by Mid-America to do these. If Mid-America is providing the Clear Results person or group or whatever to do the work, and they have added some additional staff or resources or whatever to speed it up a little. But I was thinking, so if we spend another 30 or 40,000 to have somebody do it, but we could save on the rebates, we'd probably save much more than that just in the rebates by not having that delay in the time. Does that make any sense at all?
Well, I don't know their willingness to do something other than the program that they have developed. It's a corporate-wide program. We can ask, Derek is here and hearing that. Also, I need to mention that the incentives are the much, much greater portion of the money rather than the rebates. The per fixture rebates are important, but they're a smaller portion of the total than the incentive payments. The incentive payments are based on how much energy we save, and that's a larger portion of the total of the money coming in from Mid-American.
Well, I think I've probably said my piece. I appreciate what the administration is doing. I wish we could move more quickly. I think that energy conservation is very important. I think that there are common sense things that we can do. My understanding is that Dick has said some things, and I hope that the administration can move forward if it gets that letter from Dick saying, yes, indeed, this constitutes something that we can take advantage of through the use of capital funds. I'll leave it at that. Any other discussion? Superintendent Tate.
So we've been on an interesting journey with energy, and it was a few months ago where we all were thinking we'd be the first completely solar district, and that didn't work out. And you have to realize Mr. Maloney and I are walking on a fence between opinions of this board. Some were just get it done, and some was no way, we're not ready to do that. And the middle road was let's make as many energy efficiencies as we can and keep solar on the burner and try to make that happen. I think that the programs to get the rebates are we have to do the commissioning. True or not?
Where that is one of the energy efficiency measures that is recommended by Clear Results, that's one of the steps we need to take in order to get the rest of the incentives all lined up. And many of the energy efficiency measures recommended by the Clear Results study are common sense things, as you say. Others are much more technical and engineering stuff.
And in your estimation, the net savings is greater than the expense of doing the commissioning, or we wouldn't do it?
Yes. Commissioning, retro-commissioning, I mean, it's like well established that the return on investment is quite quick.
And you and I are holding back on doing another RMP, our request for proposals for solar, because we didn't feel like we had that direction from the board. I mean, that's where you and I were. Now, if you want us to do it again, we can do it. So I guess I'd ask, do you want us to prepare another proposal and ask what is out there to add solar to our portfolio?
Director Snyder.
I guess just food for thought. I'm going to read a small little excerpt from our April 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting. Several board members responded they value saving money in the general fund, but would like the audits completed for every building before making definite plans for solar projects. After extended discussion, directors Gosa, Kluhl, Snyder, and Hayes said they could go along with the orange plan. DeSalvo emphasized she wanted audits completed for every building before starting any solar projects and thinks the orange plan is too aggressive. Maloney said the audits could be completed this time next year for every building. Johansson thought it was a mistake to prioritize other building projects over the opportunity to save money in the general fund, and believes that energy efficiency and solar should be paramount, and feels that sense of urgency since being more aggressive with energy efficiency and solar will save money in the general fund. And then the last sentence I want to read says, Dr. Tate asked if the board could agree with the following statement. Invest, save, and pebble funds for energy efficiency projects in an accelerated pace to complete all practical projects by the fiscal end of year of 2019-2020. Solar projects will complement the completion of energy efficiency, with arrays being placed as soon as possible based on availability of funds and construction limitations and audits.
Thank you. Anything else? Director Cluel.
Well, I'm glad Dr. Tate brought this up as a question. As we talked about earlier with our budget, I think an organization needs an intentional path forward right now in terms of going with a contractor who would be able to receive these rebates. We're taking a passive approach. Now, you got something at 6:30 this evening, but it seems to me that if we're interested in studying all of the opportunities, that we would go out and request that RFP.
Any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I would say I don't agree. I think we're too early to even go out for an RFP because, again, I don't have anything to show good one way or another. I'm looking for comparison. I would like to know, and whether we go with solar power or utility company provided, to not have our buildings as energy efficient as possible is going to be a waste of money for us, no matter who we're getting that supply from, whether it's from our own self or from a utility company. So that I'm looking to see, to get those done, which I think makes sense because of the rebates involved. Why would we not want to get our buildings as energy efficient as possible? But it has to take time. I think I'm still struggling with what the big urgency is here. I know we have to save money, and I understand that, but we're going to save money during this process. And I've seen so many projects, unfortunately, that we have rushed through that have not worked out the way we want. And I'm in the middle of one right now with the district that I don't want to say it was rushed through, but there were things that didn't go as we had thought. And I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not putting the blame on anybody, but I think we all need to do our research. We need to have information in front of us that helps us make informed decisions before we move to such a huge, massive project. The one I'm talking about is a little itty bitty thing that just is causing all kinds of havoc right now. And I can't imagine something of this magnitude, the repercussions that could come from it. And I'm not prepared to do that at this point. I don't have enough information to make that decision, so I couldn't support it right now.
Anybody else? No? Director Gosa. Do you have any thoughts on the superintendent's question about should the administration develop another RFP for solar?
I think Director Snyder read it earlier. I'm all about being aggressive with it. I mean, we're sitting here spending all this money to figure out where we can save money. I don't know if we're spending what we're actually getting back, or I'm for going aggressively at it. I don't know why we haven't. I mean, it's 2017, almost 2018. Obviously, we're way behind the curve. So that's where I'm at.
Anybody else? Well, I got to say, I wasn't prepared to answer that question. I do think that part of the reason for me that there is a sense of urgency is that I do believe that the rebates are decreasing, and you've acknowledged that. I believe that the credits will be disappearing, and I think that's probably acknowledged by almost every American. That's going to happen. I believe that will result in, if we take enough time, it will result in there not being a possibility of going solar. And I believe that utility costs are going to be increasing. And and even the energy report that you cited last year, you said, well, yeah, it's expected to rise at least 2% per year. We've asked for guarantees from the utilities. You know, if they could guarantee us 20 years of cost, like we had in those prior solar examples, that'd be great. And I think if they would just say, yeah, we'll guarantee it at the same rate that you're at, maybe we'll take them up and never have to think about solar. I don't know that it hurts the administration to do an RFP, does it?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think that would be a big deal. And I do believe that energy efficiency is important. I think it's important from a leadership perspective as well as a fiscal responsibility perspective. So
What are we doing an RFP of?
what the superintendent asked was whether the administration, whether the board would want the administration to prepare a request for proposal for solar energy in the district.
For all buildings or a few?
He didn't specify that. You'd have to ask him.
Okay.
Well, we probably leave that open. RFP is going to have to say, make a proposal where you can make some money. I mean, that's what we're going to get, and maybe some of the buildings, portion of them, one or two.
That's where I struggle, because how can we make a decision when we don't know where we're at? But I'm all about aggression. I move forward. Let's get these audits done, and then let's think about it. And we're there. We're getting them done. We're making progress. But I still can't support it at this time. I will support it eventually, but I can't support it right now because I don't have enough information to be able to even compare apples to apples.
So you're saying you don't support the administration developing a request for proposal? Director Snyder.
I understand Director DeSalvo's, wanting to get the information, but as far as a RFP goes, I think it's administration's well within their boundary and their duty to request an RFP if they feel it can save the district money. At the board level, we can always reject it. But I think if they honestly feel there's a way we could save money and there's something we should look at, I don't think they need our permission to give us an RFP.
Any additional discussion? Mr. Maloney, thanks for standing up there this whole time. I got to say that prior to the meeting, well, I had mentioned to one of your colleagues, Debbie Heitman, that I was inclined to ask her to come up here. And I was just thinking that might have been pretty difficult.
We should let her observe a couple of times first.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you appreciate all of the board's input, and we do appreciate everything you do, and that everybody is working at light speed on this. And so I think we all have the same goals: to move aggressively, to get it done, to get the audits done, however the administration interprets the RFP, and to save money, which you indicated up here, save general fund money is key. So thank you very much for everything you're doing. And thank you back there for everything you guys are doing too.
And I would like to have Debbie, Joe, and Eric do more of this work. It's part of institutional capacity building.
We need that. We need a lot of institutional capacity building. That's correct. Thank you for that. Okay, I think that's it. All right, we'll move on to administrative reports.
I have none tonight.
Board requests, I have one. This is from Director Kluhl, dated August 28th. Information request, description of DCSD recycling program. As an example, my understanding is that our boardroom recycling bins only accept containers with monetary refund. What level of commitment is the district willing to make towards recycling? Our district has an exemplary environmental record. Recycling should be an important component of our agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
The question is, when would you like this information or agenda item? Director Kluhl, do you have an indication?
Before the annual meeting, if possible.
I'll put ASAP. The agenda committee just met prior to this meeting, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, thank you. I guess that's about it. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I just want to say something.
Sure.
That in the 15 years that Mr. Ox has been at West, I've seen those classes come here, and I just want to express my appreciation for all of you being here this evening. And although sometimes it's got to be hard to understand how all this deals with you as a student, believe me, everything that we've talked about tonight had to do with you as students, trying to find ways to put money in the classroom to help provide for your education. And do take away this, that you are being attacked. Our superintendent is being attacked by the state. You are being attacked as well. You heard the board talk about the budget tonight. We're going to continue to fight that battle. Mr. Reek talked about it as well. That's a battle that we're going to continue to fight because you are important to us.
Thank you for those comments, Director Kluhl. I had asked for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.